they'll miss out on the audio sound. So yeah, you'll find the audio section in there as well. So yeah, that's your reference file. You've got the grandma sound, and then your video. You look at the production audio, you'll find it's from a Zoom, if I remember rightly. There you go. Yeah, it's from a Zoom mic, and you have to enter there and have a look through that. I just wanted a quick chat about what Red is. If you go into Red's a really awkward thing. Red cameras were created by a guy who made sunglasses, and because of that, it's a very awkward company that does things in their own way. And you'll find that all the way through. Now, yes, it makes fantastic video because the company took a different direction with the way that it actually records video within the camera. But this is what you get. So if you look in these little packages, it's separated out into different sections. That's because the camera records onto a FAT32 hard drive. And if anyone knows what a FAT32 kind of system is, it breaks it down to 4 gigabyte chunks. And it can't go any further, so it breaks it down to different sections beyond that. Now, that's not the most efficient way of doing something like that, but that's the way that Red works. And you'll find that that's kind of what Red's like. It requires everything to work around what Red is. So things like debayering is a requirement for the systems that look at Red, it's a kind of it'll cause you issues and problems as you go through when working with Red footage in general. But if you're looking at that, basically what you're looking at is all the footage inside of the different packages that the systems have to be able to read. Now, some systems can and some systems can't. And it's also a massive file size that causes a lot of systems problems when they're trying to run through it. If you find that's the case, now I know some students have different kinds of systems they're working on. If you find that you're having real problems when looking at this stuff, when you're grading on it, don't forget we've got a load of grading systems. Every single system we have in 301 now has the full version of Resolve. You can also book up the Resolve suite inside of there. You could do it on Nucoder. All these things are available to you. If you're finding it difficult and slow on your system, use those systems. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of point that out to you with Red files. Now I'm just going to do a quick demo of transcoding and then talk a little bit about what you end up with and how to deal with that as well. So I'm just going to open my Resolve. I'm recording this as well, guys, so I'll put this onto Owler and Moodle. I'm just going to Untitled Projects. I'm going to go to my media page. I'm going to find my files. Now, in this instance, I'm only going to use 4 files. I'm going to find a very small amount of them. I'm going to go to my hard drive here, but wherever you kept the files or brought the files in. I've got these within a 4K conform session. I'm going to take these 4 Red files, shift select them. I'm going to drag them down to the media pool. This is the first thing that comes up. You tell me, what do I press? Change. Why do I press change?
You want the same settings for the project as
exactly. Because I want the same settings as the project footage. This is Red. This is all. If I click on the file, I can see the metadata for the file. It's Red footage. It's 23.976. It's 5,120 by 2,160. 48 kilohertz audio 2 channels. All the elements and information's on here, okay? So I know now, if I click on here, because I press change, that this is 23.976. The one thing I keep saying this every time, start with Resolve. The one thing that you cannot change once you start the project is the frame rates. And this is, in this particular instance, it is devastating to your projects if you mess this up. Absolutely devastating. If you get audio that is 25 or 23.976 in this instance, frames per second or recorded within that space, and you have video that's been converted to 25 frames per second, what are you stuck with? Pardon? Out of sync. Completely out of sync and no way of getting it back to it. So if this is and students do it every year, this does happen. First instance is make sure that your frame rate is right when you're doing your transcoding. So anyway, I've just made that right, so we know it's 23.976. I've got these files here. All you have to do is go to the edit page, take your files. Oop, don't worry about that. Let's just auto-save.
talking about
Pardon? These are the red 4K files. So I'm going to drag them down to my timeline. Now, second mistake students do at this present moment in time, you have 580 gigabytes of footage to transcode, and you're doing it on one timeline. All right? Sometimes you're fine, it'll work. Sometimes your systems can cope, but most of the time you'll find you'll crash halfway through and you'll lose everything. So what's the clever thing to do in that instance? Not just save, but cut it into bits. Exactly. Break your whole transcode down into sections before you start. And what I would do personally, I would start in 4s and then break down that way. And if that causes problems, I go to 8ths. Right? But I'll start in quarters. So I'll take a 4th of the actual material I'm dealing with, try and transcode that at once. And then I'll keep that in the file separately and then build it up so I've got all the transcode of the footage I need to go through afterwards. But don't just jump and try and do the whole lot, because it'll crash.
After we've transcoded the footage, because I saw it's all in folders, is it going to be those bits that together, or are they going to be separate files?
So look here. When it actually comes into the actual system, it comes in as one.
Oh.
So that's where this system recognizes and can work with red footage. Because it knows how the kind of the red system was saved, and it's being debayered as it's being pulled into the system. So you don't need to worry about that part of it. Now, some systems can't do that, and that's why Resolve's quite good. Now, I think to be honest, most systems these days are actually capable of doing these things. Some do it better than others.
I think probably maybe what he's maybe getting at is the audio that's been recorded separately. At this stage, would you be syncing it?
No. Is that what you asked? No, you don't sync at this point, sync at the next point. So, syncing here, you could do it, you could sync here.
It'd be more complicated.
I feel like if I'm in the editing stage, it's easier for me to sync it all up and run it out. I think, I'd sync in the next stage. You could put your quarter chunks or whatever you're going to transcode onto your timeline, and then simple as go to the deliver page, and then you've got these settings at the top corner. All right? We go through them. For this kind of situation, you've got two options. You have Premiere XML and Avid AAF. Either of these two routes. If I'm going to Premiere. If I'm going to Avid, all right? Quite straightforward. I'm going to click on Premiere for this instance. I'm going to choose my location. At this point, I'm going to do my hard drive just for now. Press open. I'm going to chuck it onto a hard. Now, I'd recommend making a file, because you're going to make a lot of files that these will go into. Make a folder, put it into the folder, and organize yourself up right. Which I should have done, but I didn't. But I'm not going to go through this process. I'm going to show you what I'm doing. Just to so you know what you're dealing with here, this is automatically set, so it's right for Premiere. As you can see here, it says individual clips. You are making individual clips. So every single file that's on your timeline will be turned into an individual clip, and that individual clip will keep the same file name as the original file name and keep the time code. Two things that are the most important: file name, time code. Without those, you won't have any way of reconnecting the media later. So I'm just going to go through this quite straightforward. This is, as you can see here, you can change here what you want it to be converted to. Now, Caroline just told you exactly these things. So if I change this to DNX HD, what have we got here? So these are the things that Caroline just mentioned. We have 145, 1080i, 1080p, 185, all the options you have. You can choose what you want it to be. Proxy footage. If you want to go down we're talking DNX HD, so I'll keep it on the DNX HD.
If you did this option, you'd probably want to select the 36 8-bit. It'd be perfectly fine.
36 is fine. I'd say you can go higher than that. To be honest with your systems, you could go all the way to 185, and I think you'd not have a problem. You want to go 1080p, yeah? Okay, yeah.
It's progressive, isn't it? It's not interlaced.
We can make it 10-bit if you want to work with 10-bit footage as well. I think your systems would have no problem with working with that. It's only a 1:30. So 1080p, 185, 10-bit footage to proxy to, which is probably it's high quality HD that you'd work to. And that's what you're setting here, basically. You're setting your proxy choice. Once you've done that, you can add to render queue and then start render, and that will process it. And what you'll end up from that, pre-prepared, if I can find it, with my hard drive, here we go, is these files. So if let's say you made a Premiere XML, inside of that is what you'd create. So for Premiere, as you can see, I've created an XML and the footage. So you'd have a series of footage after that as well, not just that one file, but you have all the footage you converted to. As you can see, that footage has been transcoded. That's Premiere. So you'd have the XML and the footage, simple as that. And then what you'd do is you go to Premiere, you'd open up the XML, and when you do that, it would create the timeline, and on that timeline, all the footage would be connected to it.
Is that pretty much the same as creating a proxy? So it's like small.
So these are proxies. This is creating proxies. It's exactly that. So I've created proxies, and I'm working on proxies. Now what's important here is that, right there. V1, 0000, 1, A0005, and so on, which is the same as that there. And that's what you need to reconnect. If they are different, or if you go in and rename that to a guy on floor crawls, will not reconnect. So just general, don't rename files at this stage or this area.
Since they're proxy files and we're not going to be rendering to that, it doesn't exactly matter what we're transcoding to, right, when it comes to the proxies?
No.
Okay, great.
No. Just the point of proxies to be smaller. If you want to go to 36, you can go to 36. If you want to go to 185, the reason why I say 185 is 1 minute 30 program that will not tax your system. That footage will be fine. And that's the best quality footage you can work with that will be fine.
At this stage, it's probably worth bearing in mind is to keep the FPS the same. So keep
Yeah.
it
Very
keep
well,
it
yeah.
when you're transcoding at this stage. The point at which we change over to our deliverable is when we're in the Avid. That's when we change the whole edit. Once you've relinked back in DaVinci Resolve to the original the proper high information. When you link back to the red footage back in, later on, it'll still be at 23.98. It's only when we get to the Avid that we make it work to a 25 interlaced.
So yeah, I recommend final export.
Yeah. Keep it at 23.98.
The final export before you go to Content Agent will be the frame rate change.
So will it not affect the grade if we convert?
Don't convert beforehand. So don't. That's right. You either do your conversion right at the start of the process or right at the end of the process. Don't do it halfway through because you can cause many an issue. So basically, you will get to the point where, like Caroline said, that you're on the Avid to export to Content Agent essentially for deliverables. That's when you do your conversion. All right, I just wanted to show Avid. How many people are going to do this on Avid? Come on, do this. Yeah, nice one. Right, so on Avid, I'm going to open that up. That's what it'll look like. All right, what's different about that? There's multiple files. Why is there multiple files? And why are they called different things? Pardon? There was one clip that I exported. That is one clip. This is the difference between Avid and Premiere.
Is it something to do with the channels?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, what is it? Tell me about the channels.
I don't know exactly.
How many
different channels? I don't know.
How many tracks did he have when he dragged the files over? One file.
Oh, it's audio.
Yeah, one video, two audio.
So we've got two audio, A1 and A2, and the video. Notice that the video is named exactly the same. V1, 000, but the audio is not. The audio is different. And this is what might scupper you, cause you issues and problems later on the line to transcode back or transfer the footage back. Now, the video will translate back fine. Sometimes you might have now, I know that there's no audio on these files, so you should be fine. But there is audio on some of the Canon, the Grandma stuff and all that. So if you're transcoding that, you don't have to. I don't think, I think they are raw files, so you might need to transcode those. Have a play around with that, to be honest. But in that instance, you may have issues sometimes translating the audio because the audio isn't named the same. It's audio 1 or 2. So going back to the Resolve after you creating these in the first place, it might be a bit confused about what that audio is. But that shouldn't be a problem because you're not using these elements to do the audio. You'll be doing the audio separately and creating a WAV and bringing the WAV in, and that would solve all your problems. All right, and that's how you get round that particular issue. But importantly, the most important thing is the video is labeled exactly the same, so you can translate that back to the original. But yes, for one of the major issues that people have here is this. So when you're in your Resolve, people think it's perfectly fine to create an XML from here as well and try and open that XML up when they've got their burnt-in footage. That will not reconnect. You need to use the XML that you've spat out at the same time and use that one separately, because that will reconnect to have the right kind of file names with Avid. It shouldn't make any difference with Premiere, but with Avid it should solve your audio problems and it should reconnect effectively. So make sure that when you're going back to Avid after being in Resolve, this is right at the later section, you use that AAF, not another one you've created from Resolve. So that's the one you create when you're in the Deliver page and click on Avid AFF. Okay? So many confused faces. All right? Get that? Good. No?
You are recording this, right?
I am recording this. Yeah, I am recording this. Right, cool. At which point, so before I carry on to the next section, any questions on that? This is the transcoding process.
Is this what we'll do?
So exactly. So this is what you do right now. So you should be downloading the footage. How many people are downloading right now? Yes. Yes. Well done, guys. Downloading the footage as soon as possible, and then transcode that as soon as possible. And then you can start this process. That's the bit that will take the longest time, to be honest. And once you've got that, probably the edit will be less than that.
So, did it create the XML automatically?
Yes, that's the reason why you go to here and you click on Premiere XML and Avid AAF. And it will create it. The important thing is it creates it when it does it, so all the elements are linked together from what you've done, rather than any past elements.
Basically, what the XML and the AAF file is it's just a kind of database of all of those files and all the metadata that makes up that information. Without that metadata information, it just makes it easier when you're working with those files in the respective software. Yeah. Would you prefer a different codec?
Did that record? I hate these things. I'm sure I pressed record.
You did press record. No, I know. Go file and then quit, and then it will come up with you an option. Hold on. Quit template, and then it will give you
Done it. Yeah,
right,
okay, yeah, good. So we'll call this transcoding one.
The only thing you might want to reload.